and striking innovation.
Too high! Uruk not reach! Come down!
The game follows the story of Talion, a ranger who loses his family and his own life at the hands of Sauron's forces at the Black Gate. A vengeful spirit we now know as the elf wraith Celebrimbor brings Talion back from the dead to help discover the origins of the Rings of Power and ultimately confront Sauron and his black captains.
Gonna make a lovely necklace from your teeth!
At a recent press event at the Monolith offices outside of Seattle, we were allowed to get a detailed hands-on look at the game, including combat, traversal, the skill tree, and its innovative Nemesis System. Since the game was announced, the Nemesis System has been a pillar of gameplay. It's a complex web of interactions between the enemy AI and the player.
Max Swine! You were lucky to outrun me before. This time you're not going anywhere.
The Nemesis System is so vast, you could traverse through the open world with virtually endless amounts of interactions and activities to complete. The development team at Monolith said they have 3 tenets for the system. First, there would be no generic cannon fodder, meaning any enemy can have an interaction with you and eventually become promoted through the ranks to become a sub-boss. Second is the idea of memory and how enemies build stories and relationships with you throughout your playthrough. Lastly is the concept of moving the world forward through death. Dying in Shadow of Mordor actually enhances the story instead of setting you back by having enemies react to you and thus fight you differently after you've died by their hands. It was surprising just how many different personalities the player can encounter and the level of detail the Nemesis System provides you with. Each enemy has a name, an identity, motives, strengths, and weaknesses. Some enemies are vulnerable to certain types of combat, like stealth finishing moves or mounted beasts. Others have fears, like burning, or other enemies in the world, like graugs or ghouls. They also have corresponding strengths, like health regeneration or charge attacks. When you finally engage with the foes you've researched, some of them will fight to the death, others beg for mercy, and yet others will just flee. You can choose to kill your enemies and pick up runes from their corpses, or you can choose to use your Wraith abilities to dominate them. Once they're dominated, you can use them to infiltrate or gain intel on Sauron's forces. You can also command them to murder other enemies that stand in your way on the path to finding Sauron's 5 black captains, thus creating a power struggle. Ultimately, you need to fight your way up through the war chiefs to the black captains on Talion's quest for revenge.
I would ease this pain. Let your race inherit it.
Combat will be the primary way you get there. The combat in Middle-earth combines a basic melee brawler system with supernatural wraith abilities. While on the ground, you can use your sword or dagger to fight enemies. These are the only 2 melee weapons you'll ever use, but they can be upgraded by collecting various runes and unlocking abilities in the skill tree. Each rune has a different buff and a different level ranging from 1 to 25, thus providing thousands of possible combinations. When you look at your runes in the menu system, it'll show what power the rune has, such as the power of the Earth rune that recovers focus on a ground execution, or Grim Resolve that buffs defense from ranged attacks. It also shows you the enemy you killed to gain that rune in a trophy system of sorts. When you no longer want a rune, you can destroy it to earn Mirian, the in-game currency, which can also be earned from artifacts found in the world. While in combat, your focus meter rebuilds as you land strikes and can be used to perform executions and wraith moves. These wraith skills provide a fresh dynamic to combat that would otherwise become very repetitive, and they can also help get you out of tight situations. Your third weapon, the bow, is usable in Wraith mode and can be leveled up through runes like the sword and dagger. The Shadow Strike ability allows you to teleport attack an enemy, or Shadow Strike Kill allows you to execute an enemy from afar, something very useful while trying to be stealthy. You can also use your Wraith abilities to dominate certain animals in the world to use them as mounts, something that can be done on the ground or ranged through Shadow Mount.
Pull him off his place!
Using mounts like Graugs and Caragors increases movement speed and destruction. Both can climb walls like Talion, which is not only powerful, but just as much fun as it looks. When you dismount, the dominated creature will continue to fight for you until all enemies are dead or until it's killed. There's no health regeneration system. You'll need to find herbs or flowers in the environment to rebuild your health, but again, death is used as a vehicle to propel the story. The Traversal System is very intuitive, with climbing similar to Assassin's Creed or Infamous. You can use certain methods to stealth your way into strongholds, which is an important part of gameplay because once the alarm is raised at a fort, it's incredibly difficult to fight your way out without outright fleeing. You can use certain elements in the world to your advantage, such as dropping a wasp's nest as a distraction, or poisoning a grog barrel to slowly kill off enemies, or cause them to fight each other. But you'll need to focus on your target and objective to succeed.
There! A target!
After discussing the lore with the team at Monolith several times, it's clear that they're taking painstaking care to make sure that they stay true to the Tolkien canon, while also putting their stamp on the project. At Gamescom, they showcased Gollum, a key character who interacts with Celebrimbor, not dissimilar to Frodo and Gollum's interaction in The Lord of the Rings, with Talion playing the role of Sam.
Cut that Caragor's tail off as a trophy, along with your ears.
Considering that fans of the Tolkien books and movies know where the story ultimately leads, it could be assumed that the outcome of the story is inevitable. But lead game designer Bob Roberts said, "The notion we know how it's going to end is true only in a very high-level abstract sense. The journey that takes you there has a lot more room to tell a story than people assume. There are certainly some things we're explaining that make things make a lot of sense that were otherwise unexplained. Even the most dedicated Tolkien fans will be surprised and hopefully excited about some of the things they'll find." While that remains to be seen, what we did learn from our time with the game is that Monolith has created an extensively complex structure of interactions with the Nemesis System that offers a unique gameplay experience for each individual player. How you proceed through the storyline will ultimately be your choice, but it's guaranteed not to be identical to anyone else's experience. Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor releases on September 30th for Xbox 360, Xbox One, PS3, PS4, and PC.
Manfield!
Great on its own, you didn't need the Hobbit, but there's a lot of cross-communication. There's a lot of interesting things that you can learn about what's happening in the other by just kind of exposing some of that. And so this, again, as you can see here, we've got Gollum as a really key character in our game, because this is the point in time after Bilbo stole the ring in the Hobbit. Gollum's going searching for it. He ended up in Mordor at this time. And because you're possessed by the wraith of Celebrimbor, who forged the Rings of Power, you get this this chance to interact with him in a way that he's got a special connection to you because of that. You know, he was a ring bearer at one point. So it's the kind of thing where your relationship with him will be completely standalone in our experience, but then you go back and watch the films and you see this other side of him. You understand where he was in between, and it just sort of fleshes out the world for people who might only have watched the movies.
Yeah, and I thought it was really fascinating when you and I were speaking about, Gollum's role specifically and where kind of Talion lies, as this original character that you guys have created, and saying that, he kind of plays the role that Samwise plays in The Lord of the Rings between, Frodo and Gollum's relationship.
Yeah, if you think of it like Frodo is on this epic sort of collision course with destiny, and Celebrimbor is, he forged the Rings of Power with Sauron. He's got this ancient grudge there, And he's one of the few characters in the history of Middle-earth that could legitimately go toe-to-toe there. Whereas Talion, this ranger here, he's more of an everyday guy that's kind of getting pulled into this against his will. Like, Celebrimbor won't let him die. He's there, resurrected every time he goes down. His family's dead. He'd probably rather be with them. But as long as he's given this power, he's trying to figure out how to use it for good, right?
Well, and he's slain some orcs and uruks and monsters and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and here we can see some of the wildlife as well that, some of these big things that early in the game are just too tough for you to take on, but of course you grow in power quite a bit, which is a fun theme to explore both for players, trying to get more powerful is kind of the name of the game a lot of times, but in Tolkien it's a sinister word. It's something to struggle with, that the nature of pursuing power. So it's a fun theme for us to explore, and here we'll actually see using some of these powers, using the bow, the wraith abilities here to summon some Caragors, these big cats, to distract this guy. So rather than taking him on head on, you kind of use the environment to create distractions and then sneak into his cave behind him while he's busy.
Yeah, and so this is pretty early on in the game, right?
That's right, yeah. It's a sandbox, so depending on how you play, it could be very early or it could be many, many hours in.
You could come back to it. Yeah, that was one of the things that, I was super excited about after having multiple hands-on sessions with the game, is just how much time you can spend going through the open world and really not even playing through these main story quest lines. You can really just go and explore and look for artifacts and really engage with the Nemesis system.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. The Nemesis system is obviously our key innovation. It's the thing we're really excited about because it's bringing something really new to the space. And and it gives you a lot to work with. It's basically infinitely generating these procedural bosses and procedural missions that you're never going to see in anyone else's game. Your friends are never going to see in their games. And so we see a lot of people when they come in, they start playing the story. As soon as they get into that sandbox and they start to discover the Nemesis system, they just go crazy and disappear for hours upon hours into that loop of hunting captains and getting hunted and dying, going back and get revenge for the kill, and eventually they end up on the next story mission 5 hours later, and we're, you know, as designers, we're scratching our heads like, how do we teach people how to play the game if they just wander off for 6 hours at a time?
I know, and that's one of the things that I kind of got trapped in. You know, we're seeing, you know, one of the special artifacts here. This is that's tied to Celebrimbor, correct?
Yeah, so yeah, it's kind of the Wraith world that you go into there using that power is revealing a lot of the layers of memories and history. There's thousands of years of history here in Mordor, and so you can kind of hear the memories of a lot of different characters and stories that have played out over that time, whether it was a week ago or 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago, a human or an orc or an elf. There's a lot of battles that have happened here and a lot of human stories that you can kind of discover by searching around in the Wraith world too. And
that's one of the really exciting things for me as a Tolkien fan, is to kind of really see how deep and rich, you know, that content is, that narrative content, in addition to, of course, the action. And, you know, just to jump back to what we were talking about earlier with the Nemesis system and getting lost, you know, during my playthrough, I had decided to try to go after one of the objectives, which was to brand one of the war chiefs. And so in order to take him out, I had to either go attack him head on and really just get my ass kicked, or I could take out one of his bodyguards, or both of his bodyguards first, which is what I decided to do. And then by the time I got to him and I did the objective to draw him out, he got killed by a Caragor. and I was like, man, it's crazy just how quickly things can turn inside this universe.
Yeah, and really trying to open up that sandbox to all kinds of emergent possibilities so that people are able to have these crazy experiences that are unique for them, that you can't ever expect what's going to happen. It's made it really fun for us to work on, that we get to just keep playing it every day. Every day we see something new, and I swear, at least once a week in a meeting where we're sitting playing, something crazy happens, and we just go, okay, that was our new thing for the day that we've never seen in our game before. So even after years of playing it every day, you still see these crazy emergent things pop out because of that. You know, maybe a war chief is actually about to kill you, and right before he gets that finishing blow in, a beast knocks him over from the side. Or maybe one of your branded guys that you dominated and is fighting for you comes in and saves your life. And there's all kinds of insane things that can happen. Or his rival shows up behind you and scares him, and he runs off afraid.
Now, just going back to this cutscene that we're watching here, we just saw Sauron with Celebrimbor doing the rings. Obviously, a very key, important, you know, pillar of the narrative of the entire arc, from The Hobbit through the end of the Lord of the Rings. And it's really great to kind of see you guys explore this part of that world that really hasn't been touched a lot outside of the books. Yeah, I mean, you might not even have recognized Sauron there, because that was him in his fair form as Anatar, Lord of Gifts. Everybody's kind of used to him as this huge hulking monster crazy spiky armor and the giant mace. And but yeah, we get to explore the relationship that he had in the Second Age with Celebrimbor. He's such an epic character here that a lot of people, you know, even the people who read the books, you don't get but passing mentions of some of these characters, but they're such pivotal events in the history of Middle-earth that it's fun to get to flesh a little bit of that out and kind of expose it to people, so that, again, next time you go back and read the book or watch the movie, now you've got a sense of where this came from. And you got a better picture of you know, the nature of the Rings of Power. It's just it's not an evil, malicious thing. There's these guys making beautiful art here, making some of the most amazing jewelry ever, and it turns out that it's so powerful that it corrupts the hearts of men and turns dark, and part of that's because of the pride of the people trying to craft it, you know. And that is no small feat, to make such beautiful jewelry that corrupts the hearts of men. But I know we're getting close to the end of our time here, but I wanted to talk before you go. You guys are doing a really awesome GameStop exclusive pre-order bonus for this game. Yeah, so anywhere you pre-order, you're going to get a couple things.